Hello, I'm going to put a timer to make sure I don't speak more than 10 minutes. Well, thank you everyone for being here. Thank you, Charles and Pedro, for this invitation. This morning I will present a project that relates to landscape as a form of education, as well as a way to awaken children and museum visitors to the understanding of nature in the Valley of Mexico City. In most of our projects, we collaborate with Entorno, and this one in particular was a richer teamwork. After 20 years of successful operation of the Papalote Children's Museum, they face a need to renovate their image, their architecture, their contents, and their museography, regarding today's interest and the need of transforming society and children's education in regards and concern to nature. Legorreta plus Legorreta was appointed to renovate all the interior spaces of the museum, and we were invited to design the exterior spaces. Our working space were these two main outdoor places, one assigned by the museography content, and the other one was assigned for the scholar groups' arrivals and departures while waiting to access the museum. The museum relationship towards the areas towards the outer areas was poor in terms of content and landscape. There weren't any connection between the interior space and the outer areas. So the preliminary idea was to understand both spaces as a whole. I didn't do anything. Well, the idea was to understand Should I continue?
You can pause your time.
That's a good thing. 3 minutes have gone. Well, anyway, the idea, as you saw in the diagram, it was to see one thing as a unity, and to blur this border into the interior from the exterior, and to invite nature to access the museum, but also to invite the children to study and to recognize themselves as part of it. As every architecture project, we usually address it in terms of understanding the context, and the highways and the urban condition was an important border, but also there was a negation or dissociation towards the Bosque de Chapultepec. The outdoor vegetation was mainly contained in planters and was limited to few species that did not respond to proper groundwork of an ecosystem. You can see in the picture, Hugo, there. And the pavement were mostly hard surfaces and playground areas that did not follow with the Papalote motto, which is playing, touching, and learning. So the strategy was to actually get rid of all these hard surfaces and to make permeable areas. And for that, we worked with an engineer, an hydrologic engineer, to understand how to manage water capture, make plant water treatments and other systems in terms of sustainability and awakening the consciousness of children in regards with water. The strategy sought to generate new exhibition areas, expanding the square footage of the museum space while avoiding the additional square footage of construction. As being part of Bosque de Chapultepec, Papalote had the restriction to avoid any additional construction. So this became an opportunity to expand the green areas as well, and also to reduce all the parking spaces and the original footprint of courtyards and hard surfaces. This was the office first project. Well, this was our first project approach to landscape, and we tackle it following the usual stages that we go through when conceptualizing ideas. And it's not only to understand the contents as the borders or the surrounding space in which we found the territory, but to relate to it in terms of the site history. And that was important for us to approach the bigger space, because what we wanted to do is to recreate the 5 ecosystems that are found in the Valley of Mexico City. And as I said before, this was a collaboration, and we developed different strategies. So the first area that we're working, we call it the scholar groups. And this space, we found predominant the ecosystem of a tropical forest. So the main action was to strengthen this ecosystem. And then we demolish all the building structure, all the built structures, making nature count more. Then we created a surface that could introduce children underneath the shadow of the tropical forest to make them aware of nature, of the palm trees, of the vegetation that compose this ecosystem. And we then reinforce all the vegetation needed in terms of accentuating the tropical forest, and Legarreta más Legarreta design a pergola adjacent to the building. Where we can see how this is the group access, and the idea was that this marble surface that was permeable and could capture the water from the rainwater, it would also be like the link towards the interior and the exterior of the museum and to this shadow space. There will be other additional floorings like that we can see in this floor plan, and we work with grey boats, tree bark vegetation. But as everyone has been repeating today, it's not about just like thinking of what vegetation we're going to locate, but what this could influence children in terms of understanding nature and approaching to nature. And here are some images that can for you to picture and understand the space. This is the platform that I've been talking about, and we confirmed like a main plaza in the middle underneath the shadow, but also it was like a long bench that could serve the children to rest, play, or have a moment there. The second space that we worked at was we call it the outer museography, and the actions here were considerable since we had to restore most of the surfaces, and there weren't any environment relationship towards Papalote Moto. Our aim was to create a comfortable promenades that could tell the story of nature in our context, as well as to create the setup for a museum with sustainable interest and new contents. The project interprets habitats and natural processes that involve certain awareness with our history with water, as well as with the territory conditions in the Mexico City basin. Whereas Adriana and Victor briefly explained, Mexican territory is intimately linked with water, and we used to have a better understanding and relationship to it. So the first habitat that we recreated was the wetland habitat at the highest level of the project. You can see it in the section. And then there we created a small agricultural cultivation mechanism called Chinampa. And this condition remains in Xochimilco. For those of you who haven't experienced a Chinampa experience, I could suggest that you approach Tonatiuh after and visit his Chinampa, where it's an amazing place and you'll understand how it is composed. The following habitat is found at Pedregal, and it's a xerophyte habitat, which is characteristic of the vegetation of a rocky soil. The fourth habitat is the humid forest, and you can see it's where the tallest trees are there. And we also designed a space like a elevated platform where children could relate to nature in their different scales, to approach and to learn to observe it. Because what has happened previously with the museum is that they understand outdoors as a place for playing around and not showing any respect to nature or knowledge or understanding. So the project was accessible in from the interior of the museum through different areas. All the white space is the museum that surrounds this like outer room. And we made use mainly, what the element that we used was the topography to accentuate the natural phenomenon. And we contained the topography movement with stone slopes. And you can see how we made use of the natural condition of the different heights of the museum. And then we developed a series of details, mostly in sections, to understand how we could contain and recreate these atmospheres for children to play around and interact with nature. And when developing this project, one thing that motivated all of us was that it was like an exhibition that was alive, that would be changing and would accentuate the seasons and the time passed in Mexico. Thank you very much.